It was a regular afternoon in the small, sleepy town of Larkspur, where the sun hung lazily in the sky, casting long shadows over the streets. The town, though quaint, was a patchwork of stories woven into the fabric of the community. Neighbors greeted each other by name, and children played in the parks without a care in the world. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and nothing much ever happened. But on that particular afternoon, something extraordinary was about to unfold, something that would leave everyone who witnessed it, and even those who didn't, forever change. In the town's central park, a young boy named Max was playing near the playground. He was 7 years old, with wild brown hair and an infectious laugh that could melt the hardest of hearts. Max had always been full of energy, his boundless curiosity driving him to explore every corner of the park, especially the old oak tree that stood at the edge of the playground. It was his favorite spot, its thick branches created a natural fortress, and Max would often climb it, imagining himself as the king of the world. That day, however, something was different. Max had been climbing higher than usual, and as he reached for a particularly high branch, his small foot slipped. Before he could catch himself, he lost his grip and began to fall, his body plummeting toward the ground at an alarming speed. His heart raced, his eyes wide with fear. Max had never been so high before, and he had no idea how he would stop himself. But just as the ground rushed toward him, there was a blur, a flash of movement that seemed to come from nowhere. A monkey, a creature that no one had ever seen in the park before, darted through the trees and jumped into the air. It moved with lightning speed, its fur a patch of brown and black against the backdrop of the sky. Max's eyes widened in disbelief. The monkey's paws reached out just in time to catch his fall. It wasn't enough. The monkey could not halt Max's descent completely, but it cushioned the blow. Max hit the ground with a soft thud, the impact jarring his tiny bones, but nothing too severe. His breath was knocked out of him, but he wasn't hurt. He looked up, his eyes dazed, and found the monkey beside him. It seemed to have absorbed most of the fall for him. It was panting, its eyes full of determination. The moment felt surreal, like something from a dream. The monkey, a creature from some far-off jungle, had just saved his life. But what Max didn't know, what no one could have possibly known, was that the danger wasn't over yet. A loud screech of tires echoed across the park, and suddenly, a car came barreling down the road. The car was speeding, the driver clearly in a hurry, and it had no intention of stopping for the small park where children played. Max, still dazed, was oblivious to the oncoming vehicle, still trying to recover from the fall. The monkey, however, wasn't oblivious. It saw the danger, and without a second thought, it leapt into action. Max didn't even realize the peril he was still in, but the monkey did. It scrambled to its feet, its muscles taut and ready. And in an instant, it darted toward Max, pushing him out of the way with a strength and urgency that seemed almost supernatural. The monkey's action was swift. It threw itself into the path of the speeding car, its body colliding with the front of the vehicle. The sound of impact was deafening. The car screeched to a halt, its front crumpled from the collision. The driver, a middle-aged man with wide eyes and a face drained of color, slammed on the brakes, coming to a stop just inches away from where Max had been standing. Max's heart pounded in his chest as he turned to see what had happened. He saw the monkey's limp body sprawled on the road, its fur stained with blood. The car had hit it directly. It all happened in a flash, a blur of motion, a flash of instinct. The monkey had given its life to save Max. The boy stood frozen, unable to comprehend the gravity of what had just occurred. And as the car came to a screeching halt, Max finally gasped for breath, realizing, in the most unimaginable way, that he owed his life to an animal, a small, determined creature that had risked everything to save him. He didn't understand how or why, but he knew one thing: the monkey had been his hero. The park fell silent. The only sound was the soft rustling of the wind through the trees, as if nature itself was mourning. Max stood there, his legs shaking beneath him, not yet fully aware of the full extent of the sacrifice that had just been made for him. He didn't even notice the tears welling up in his eyes, but they came, and they came quickly. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the noise of the crash, and they began to surround the scene, murmuring among themselves. But for Max, the world had stopped. The monkey, who had never belonged here, who had never been part of this town, had given everything to save him. Max looked at the monkey's body, lying still in the road, and his heart broke into pieces. But what happened next would prove that the story was far from over. The monkey's heroism would have consequences, and the small town of Larkspur would never be the same again. Max stood there, frozen in the moment, unable to tear his gaze away from the lifeless body of the monkey. The crowd around him seemed to melt away, the voices murmuring in the distance, but all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. A strange, heavy stillness hung in the air, as if the entire world had held its breath in that one instant, and now it was letting it go. His knees wobbled, and he sank down onto the cold pavement beside the monkey. The park, once full of laughter and the sounds of children playing, now felt eerily quiet. A feeling of disbelief washed over him, his mind could barely process what had happened. But there, in the stillness, Max did something he hadn't expected to do. He reached out and gently stroked the monkey's fur, his fingers trembling. The animal's body was warm, and the fur was soft despite the blood that had begun to stain it. Max's breath hitched as he whispered the only words he could think of. "Thank you." Max had heard stories about animals being heroes, but he never thought it would happen to him. How had this monkey appeared so suddenly, so mysteriously, and why had it chosen to save him? He had no answers, but the grief he felt in that moment was sharp and overwhelming. The crowd had now grown larger, people whispering, some reaching for their phones to take pictures of the scene. The car's driver, a middle-aged man who had been too stunned to react, stepped out of the vehicle, his face pale. He looked at Max, then down at the monkey, and then back at Max, his eyes wide with guilt and confusion. I am so sorry," the driver said, his voice shaky. "I didn't see it. I didn't." But Max didn't hear him. His mind was elsewhere. His heart was heavy, weighed down by a promise he hadn't yet fully understood. The emergency services arrived quickly. The police, followed by an ambulance, converged on the park, but Max barely registered their presence. They rushed to examine the monkey's body, but they already knew what had happened. The paramedics tried to console him, telling him it was okay, that the monkey had done what it could, that it was a freak accident. But Max was beyond their words. His eyes were locked on the monkey's body, and an unspoken vow began to form in his mind. As the scene began to clear, people being sent off, the police taking statements, Max felt a strange tug, as if something beyond his understanding was drawing him somewhere. He didn't know where or why, but there was a voice inside his head that whispered, "You can't let this go. You have to find out." As if the thought had unlocked something deep inside him, Max stood up and made his way to the edge of the park. He didn't stop to look back, didn't wait for anyone's approval. His heart was racing again, but it wasn't from fear, it was from an undeniable pull, a feeling that he was meant to do something important, something that would make all of this sacrifice, this mystery, mean something. He had to find out who the monkey was. The old oak tree, where Max had been climbing before the fall, was still standing tall, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Max made his way over to it, his thoughts swirling. What was the monkey doing here? Why had it been in this park of all places? And what had driven it to leap into harm's way for him? As Max approached the tree, he heard a rustle in the bushes nearby. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but then he saw something, a figure moving in the shadows. A flash of brown fur, and a soft, familiar chittering sound. Max stopped in his tracks, his pulse quickening. Could it be another monkey? Was there more to this than he had realized? The figure emerged from the shadows, and Max's eyes widened. It wasn't another monkey, this one was different. It was a small, older man with a weathered face, wearing a tattered jacket that looked like it had seen better days. His skin was dark from the sun, and his eyes were sharp, almost like the monkey's. He walked with a kind of grace, despite his old age. Max didn't know what to say. He simply stared at the man, who, with a slight smile, seemed to be waiting for him to speak. Who are you?" Max finally asked, his voice trembling. The man chuckled softly, as if he had been expecting the question. "I suppose you're wondering what happened," the man said, his voice low and calm. "About the monkey." Max nodded. His heart was pounding again, but now it was out of curiosity, the desire to understand. He wanted to know everything. The monkey, the old man continued, was no ordinary creature. He was part of something much bigger, something that connects this world to others in ways you wouldn't believe. But that's a story for another time. Max felt his breath catch. This was it. This was what he had been waiting for. The mystery. The answers. But, the man said, stepping closer, I will tell you this. The monkey saved you because he was meant to. And now, you have a part to play in a story that is far from finished. Max was speechless. He couldn't make sense of what the man was saying, but the weight of the words hung heavy in the air. The monkey's sacrifice had been a part of something larger, something that had yet to unfold. Who are you? Max repeated, his voice urgent now. Why do you know about the monkey? What's going on? The old man smiled again, his eyes twinkling with a knowledge Max couldn't quite grasp. I've been waiting for you, the man said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. And the time has come. Follow me, young one, if you wish to learn the rest. Max hesitated for a moment, looking back toward the park, toward the spot where the monkey had died. But something inside him, something deeper than fear, something that had been growing ever since the monkey had saved him, urged him forward. He had to know more. So, without another word, Max followed the man into the shadows, ready to uncover the secrets of the monkey's sacrifice, and the mysterious path that lay ahead. The old man led Max through the park, past the familiar swings and climbing structures, until they reached the very edge of the trees. Max had never ventured this far before. The park's edge was where the pavement ended, where the last house gave way to the untamed stretch of woods. Max's heart pounded as the man's footsteps crunched softly on the underbrush. There was an odd, almost magical energy to the air, like something hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. Where are we going? Max asked, his voice filled with a mixture of anxiety and wonder. The old man didn't answer right away. Instead, he paused and turned to face Max, his expression serious. Do you know what the monkey was, Max? He asked, his voice gravelly. Max shook his head. He didn't know anything about the monkey except that it had saved his life. He had been too stunned by the event to think much beyond the sheer awe of what had happened. But now, standing here in the quiet woods with the old man, it felt as though the world was about to open up in a way Max couldn't yet understand. The man continued, his gaze intense. That monkey wasn't just a random animal. He was chosen for a purpose. He wasn't from around here, not from this world, at least not in the way you think. He came from another place, another time, to fulfill a role. And his role was to protect you. Max felt a shiver run down his spine. Protect me? Why me? I'm just a kid. I don't. You are more than you realize, the old man interrupted, his eyes narrowing in the fading light. There are forces at work in this world, Max, forces that you cannot yet see. But the monkey saw them. And he knew you were in danger. He knew, and he came to save you, even at the cost of his own life. Max's mind raced, trying to piece together what the man was saying. He felt a deep sadness in his chest for the monkey. But there was something more, a sense that the monkey's sacrifice was part of something far greater. Why did he save me? Max asked, his voice small, but filled with urgency. What do I have to do with any of this? The old man looked at Max, his eyes piercing, as if weighing the depth of the question. Finally, he spoke again. Because you are destined to play a part in something that goes beyond your world. The monkey's death wasn't just an accident. It was a signal, a turning point. You were always meant to meet him, Max. And now, you must continue the path he began. Max stared at the man in disbelief. What do you mean? What path? The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he motioned for Max to follow him deeper into the woods. The trees grew denser, the path narrower, and the light from the setting sun began to fade. The air grew cooler, the stillness around them almost otherworldly. Max's steps faltered, but the pull to follow the man was undeniable, like a thread leading him forward. They walked for what seemed like an eternity, the silence between them filled with questions that Max could no longer hold back. Finally, the old man stopped, turning to Max with a look of quiet determination. What you don't know, young one, is that the monkey was the guardian of a very powerful secret. A secret that has been hidden for centuries. And now, that secret is yours to protect. Max's eyes widened. A secret? What kind of secret? The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. It looked ancient, the wood worn smooth by time. He held it out to Max. "This," the old man said, "is what the monkey died to protect. It is a key to a place that no one has entered for centuries. A place where the balance of your world, and many others, can be shifted." Max felt the weight of the box in his hands. It was surprisingly light, but something about it made his palms sweat. The carvings on the surface seemed to pulse, as if the box itself was alive with energy. Max glanced up at the man, unsure of what to say, what to think. He felt like he was standing at the edge of a precipice, about to take a leap into something unknown. What's inside it?" Max whispered. The old man's eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a whisper as well. "That is not for you to know yet. Not until the time comes. But trust me when I tell you, it holds the power to change everything. The monkey knew that, and that's why he sacrificed himself for you. He was the last of his kind, the last of the guardians. And now, it is up to you to protect what's inside this box." Max's fingers trembled around the box, but something deep inside him stirred, a deep, unshakable feeling that told him this was real, that the weight of the old man's words was true. He wasn't sure how, or why, but in his gut, he knew that the monkey's death hadn't been in vain. He had a purpose, and now it was starting to take shape. "But how?" Max asked, his voice shaking. "I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about secrets, or protecting the world, or whatever this is." The old man smiled, his expression softening for the first time. "That's the thing, Max. You don't have to know everything right now. You will learn. You are ready, even if you don't realize it yet. The journey ahead will be difficult, and there will be those who will try to stop you. But the monkey chose you for a reason. You will face trials, but you will be guided." Max swallowed hard, feeling the enormity of the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew one thing: the monkey had given his life to save him. He couldn't let that sacrifice be in vain. "So, what do I do now?" Max asked, looking up at the old man. The old man placed a hand on Max's shoulder. "Now, you carry the box. You protect it, and you find the others who are meant to help you. The road ahead will not be easy, but you have the strength within you. Trust in yourself. Trust in the journey." Max took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around the box. There was no turning back now. The world was bigger than he had ever imagined, and it was up to him to uncover its secrets and protect them. As he stood there in the woods, the fading light of the sun casting long shadows, Max knew his life would never be the same again. The monkey's sacrifice had set something into motion, something that was far from over. And with that, the path ahead unfolded before him. The journey had only just begun.